What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network, where we go coast to coast covering all things NASCAR regional and short track action. As always, yours truly, MRN pit reporter Chris Wilner, and out in Connecticut, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey. K-Rick, another week down. We're about to midpoint of June. Unfortunately, the same song and dance when it comes to Stafford and Friday night racing. This open modified 80, I was excited. I was locked in and loaded to Flow Racing until Mother Nature had other ideas. How frustrating was it on Friday, Kyle, for you guys? Because that's another one of those Fridays that we look forward to. Obviously, the Spring Sizzler and the Fall Final, but when you get the open modified 80, that brings a lot of good cars, a lot of good talent, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see it on Friday.
Yeah, no, it's a good field of cars at the racetrack on Friday night looking to compete for that trophy. It's always frustrating when in days leading up to a race, you hear scattered showers and not every town's going to get hit. And, there's a better chance of not getting wet than getting wet. And you hope, well, maybe it's down by the ocean on the other side of the state. And unfortunately, that was not the case because as my coworker Bonza said, it just kind of blossomed over the racetrack and in the neighboring town. And unfortunately, we got rained on not once, but twice and, put a damper on the night, but we'll try again this Friday, although the weather doesn't look that great this Friday either. So fingers crossed.
Just need to build a dome over Stafford Speedway or something.
Agreed.
Right? Like, come on. Talk to the roots. Let's make it happen because this is getting ridiculous. But, yeah, sorry to hear that, but glad everybody seemed to have a great weekend of racing. We had so much going on in the world of short track racing. I mean, are you kidding me? This is that best time of year scenario where we get everything is kind of in full swing. We're starting to kind of get a little bit of a vibe on where championships are in certain series, but we've got a jam-packed show for you. Of course, all the action this weekend. We've got more coming for you this weekend as well, including a big Cup Series debut weekend at Iowa. Of course, ARCA is going to be there. We'll talk about that, but we've got a special guest, and it's a name that we're pretty familiar with here around MRN, and that is Steve Post, our colleague at the Motor Racing Network, voice of the Summer Shootout, the Kickout Summer Shootout in its 31st season just down the road at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where a lot of our NASCAR Roots drivers got their starts, and even Cup Series drivers got their starts, and Steve was there to cover it all in his 27th year, so we'll talk about that and kind of his schedule for the rest of the year. But let's get to the weekend that was, K-Rick, and let's start with ARCA, the ARCA West Series out west in their second of two straight road courses, Sonoma Raceway and the General Tire 200. This time another transplant gets dropped in from the NASCAR Xfinity Series. This time it's Sam Mayer. Brandon Jones was there, unfortunately had some issues, although he thought maybe he had a good shot to win, but Sam Mayer won the pole, had to fend off his bestie in William Sawalich, maybe a little bit of contact there, we'll talk about that, but Sam Mayer got the win in his return to the ARCA West Series after a few years.
Yeah, no surprise. He wasn't up front the entire race, had to pass, Noah Gragson, I believe, in the closing laps of the race to take the top spot and ultimately the win. But, I mean, they have a lot of experience on road courses, whether it be through the NASCAR Xfinity Series in Mayer's case, and obviously he is a road course winner. Noah Gragson has a lot of experience in the NASCAR Cup Series, and prior to that, the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So when you saw those names on the entry lists, along with Brandon Jones, the last couple of weeks at Portland and Sonoma, you knew the ARCA West regulars, I guess you could call them. It was going to be tough for them to break through to victory lane. William Sawalich was out there and obviously in contention both races as well. But overall, good field of cars, good race to kick off the race weekend at the Sonoma Raceway for the West teams.
Fun to watch those cars slip and slide around, but a special weekend not only for Sam just to get back to victory lane, taste some sparkling grape juice. He's not 21 yet.
Yeah.
He said it will taste better next year when he turns 21. But a first win for car owner Joe Ferre, Sigma Performance, and a cool story with him. His company was involved in the cleanup efforts for the Francis Scott Key Bridge that collapsed with that container ship colliding with it in Baltimore a couple of months ago. So he had been pulled from the race car to deal with that. He's had drivers behind the wheel, got Sam Mayer this past weekend, and it pays off to get himself a first win as a car owner. So kind of a cool sub-story within that plot. He mentioned William Sawalich. It seemed to go bad from worse after he kind of got some contact with Mayer on a restart, ended up getting punted a little bit later, but then he came back to fourth. So it just shows you the talent that William Sawalich has as he continues to chase Race wins in the ARCA platform and, of course, going for a repeat title in the E-Series. Tyler Reif finished second, and that is huge for the championship, Kyle, because he legs up by one more point. So it's up to 11 now on Sean Hingorani, who also finished on the podium. That's going to be a battle we talk about the rest of the season, Kyle, but it's kind of hard when you get all these Cup Series and Xfinity Series drivers in. It's really, if you can get a top 5, you're doing yourself a favor for the championship as far as the West Series regulars go.
Yeah, and it's that stage of the year where there have been a number of combination events with a lot of Cup and Xfinity drivers or the National Series drivers. So it's difficult to get a gauge on which West teams are running best right now. Obviously, the opener in Phoenix was also a combination event, but a big day for Sean Hingorani in Sonoma. Needed to bounce back after having those issues at the Portland Raceway, Portland International Raceway, the first of this road course stint last week. Good run for him. He was a championship favorite coming in, obviously the defending champion of the series from a year ago. So a nice third place effort for Sean and that race team after struggles last week.
And kudos to Jack Wood. Jumps to third in the championship with the top 5. Trevor Huddleston going the wrong direction. He was up in the top 5 in points. He's now back to 6th after issues at Sonoma. They've got a month off until we get a doubleheader. Remember that rescheduled date from Irwindale back in April? Well, it's now a doubleheader July 4th weekend out west in Los Angeles. That's next for the ARCA West Series. How about the Jack Ingram 111, the 3rd annual running of this event, celebrating the life of one of the best to ever do it on the short tracks at Hickory Motor Speedway. Always brings out a great contingency of late model stock cars to Hickory, just north of us here in Charlotte. And again, Cade Brown, who has pretty much stamped himself as the favorite anytime he goes to Hickory, being a track champion himself, came close in this race a year ago. Redemption, Kyle, for Cade Brown at Hickory in the Jack Ingram.
Yeah, was able to watch some of the highlights of this event. Of course, driving for Matt Piercy Racing, a longtime staple of the Hickory Motor Speedway and Southern late model racing in general. Saved his stuff, and that's the key for a lot of these long late model events, these big races with a lot of cars on the racetrack. Took the lead with 55 laps to go and never really looked back. We've talked about Cade on this show a number of times over the last couple of seasons, and usually associated with the Hickory Motor Speedway, and picks up one of their biggest events of the year this past weekend.
100%. Congratulations to Cade. Michael Bumgarner finished in 2nd. Charlie Watson in 3rd. Landon S. Huffman, not to be confused with Landon Huffman, the track champion, finished 4th. Landon S. doing a nice job, though, as a full-time regular up there at Hickory Motor Speedway. And Thomas Bean rounding out the top 5. Some other winners this weekend. Rick Dawson Sutton, a name we've seen already make his debut in the Craftsman Truck Series. He's running for Rackley War on the late model side of things. Picked up his first pro late model win at Nashville back over the weekend. Peyton Sellers back to doing Peyton Sellers things at South Boston, splitting twin features up there with Blake Stallings. The ACT Tour had its 3rd straight first-time winner. Rookie of the Year candidate Casey Beattie won at Seekonk, and Connor Zilic just keeps on winning in everything he drives, winning in Mazda MX-5 Cup. Of course, we'll see him a little bit later, more back on the NASCAR side of things, and of course, the Cars Late Model Tour. But as we speak, Kyle, this is one of the biggest races for our colleague Jeff Striegel, the general manager at Berlin Raceway in Martin, Michigan. The Money in the Bank 150 brings out all the stars. He has been busier than heck the last couple of weeks getting his racetrack ready. Practice yesterday, Carson Hocevar, a defending winner of this race, was fastest. But Kyle, this is a huge event if you're in the super late model game up there in Michigan.
Yeah, $15,000 to win, 150 laps, a special midweek show. All the big teams are there. You mentioned Carson Hocevar, the defending winner of the race. Eric Jones, actually, Eric Jones is the defending winner of the race. He won a year ago. Carson Hocevar won a couple of years prior to that, the 2020 and 2021 version. You have guys like Derek Griffith and Derek Nealon also on the entry list. So going to be a big event. I know Jeff has been having his fingers crossed for the last couple of weeks that they get good weather later tonight. Obviously, you want a big crowd. It's going to be live on Flow Sports. So it's going to be a big night at Berlin Raceway, one of the true showcase short track facilities there in the Midwest.
Absolutely. We talked about it with him last year too, the infrastructure developments or improvements that they've done over the last year and a half or so, and it's become really a staple of short track racing. It's a difficult racetrack too, very uniquely shaped, and it takes drivers a little bit of time to get adjusted to it. So if you have experience there, it really pays dividends in the long run for some of these big races, including Evan Shotko, who's a track champion there and is looking to add to his Battle at Berlin win that he had a couple of years ago to get the money in the bank. So again, that's happening as we speak, as we record on Wednesday. Of course, when this show airs, we'll have a winner. But we're going to talk to Jeff Striegel later on this season before the Battle of Berlin and kind of get his take on the state of short track racing and his racetrack at Berlin Raceway and all the big things they're doing up there. So best of luck to those competing tonight. Hopefully good weather is in the cards for them. All right, we've got Steve Post waiting in the wings, and it's time to transition to where we talk about legends and bandoleros, the real grassroots start for a lot of our drivers. The voice of the Cookout Summer Shootout is coming up next on the other side of this break. This is NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back into NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America. Whelen Engineering, and as promised, joining us in studio on now the other side of the table than where he's used to sitting, it's our own Steve Post, MRN lead pit announcer, and of course, voice of the Cookout Summer Shootout. What, 27 years now, Steve?
27 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It was the late 90s. I moved to North Carolina. It was the first talking gig that I got. I was an announcer up in Pennsylvania and New York, and it was the first talking gig that I got. I've only MRN's 22 years, so 5 years I was there at Charlotte, and I got it. And I remember Roger Slack was the operations guy at the racetrack, and he says, "Oh, we'll give it a whirl and see how it goes." 27 years, I think we're doing all right with it. I think that's what we're looking for.
You can keep your job. I think you've passed the audition. That's awesome.
It's been cool. It's been so awesome, and we're off to such a great start this year. We had rounds 1 and 2 on Monday and Tuesday night. Lots and lots of kids racing. 138 drivers entered on Monday night, 135 on Tuesday night, and we're off and running with the Cookout Summer Shootout.
Unreal.
I know it's only week one. Have there been any standouts, any names that we should be listening for, whether it be the rest of this summer shootout season and down the road?
Yeah, Jake Bowman is a pro driver. Jake is from Huntington Beach, California, and we've seen Jake. He had some rides in super late models or pro late models with Rackley War Racing. He's done a little bit of this and a little bit of that. He's 2 for 2 in the pro division, and he is on stun. The pro division is phenomenal because talking to some of the drivers there, we've had like 16 and 18 cars, which is about right for the pros, and they're the top drivers. I mean, Bubba Wallace is in this field and hasn't sniffed the top 10. Now Bubba will get there, but he hasn't been in a Legends car in a while also. But we have like a 3-time champion, Jordan Love, that's Jordan Black, who has joined us. And he is back half of the top 10. This is really, really locked in. This field is really, really tight. And yet, when we get to the second half of the feature, this Jake Bowman kid is just checking out. I mean, open up an advantage. So he is really, really good. Young racer, as I said, from California. And I think this series, this Cookout Summer Shootout, has been such a feeding ground. And when that's a great question to ask, Kyle, because it's like, who catches your eye? Right now, Jake Bowman is catching my eye, and I'm fairly confident he's probably catching some other eyes along the way. Another driver, Max Reeves, is doing well in the semi-pro ranks. Max, I believe, has signed some development deal with Joe Gibbs Racing. Wow. And so he's out there running around as well. So Max Reeves and Jake Bowman, 2 weeks in, those are 2 names to keep an eye on.
All right, we're gonna get a list going now of all these names that we get to look at. But over your 27 years, I mean, you got to watch Bubba when he was this tall. Daniel Hemrick, also another one that's made it. So how special is it for you to, I mean, you call them your kid, they were kids, right?
Yeah.
And now that they're here running the big time.
Just I'm old, yeah.
Well, we're not going to divulge how old you are, Steve. But I mean, as an announcer, though, for so long and seeing the kind of growth of these drivers, how special is it to you to be part of that?
It is unreal, and it is so rewarding. And, I sit back, and I was thinking about that last night. I'm watching these kids now, and 10 years from now, who am I going to be interviewing on Saturdays and Sundays from this field of Legends Cars drivers? And yeah, that Summer Shootout has been such a dynamic part of motorsports. Probably the driver that's had the most success and has climbed the furthest is Daniel Hemrick. But when you look at Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Ryan didn't spend a lot of time with us there at the Summer Shootout. Dave kept him moving. There's some drivers that spend a lot of time at Summer Shootout, and there's some drivers that have a cup of tea with us for a year. William Byron came in for 1 year, and they just kept him moving up the ladder. And I think either school works. And so when you look at all these kids, it's fascinating when we get to the Cup Series. One of the first lessons in the garage area is don't call me Mr. Post. I'm Steve or the postman or whatever you want to call me. I respect that I'm Mr. Post out there, but we need to move on beyond that. And it's really been fun and really rewarding. This kind of started. I go way back, the Wayback Machine in this thing. And when I first started back in the early 90s, the hot driver was Reed Sorensen, and Reed came up, ran the Cup Series for a number of years, and now is no longer doing that. But Reed Sorensen was the first in a series of drivers and that I've covered that has taken this to the NASCAR Cup Series, Truck Series. We even have Carson Ferguson, one of the single best Legends racers. Carson Ferguson is evolved into a great dirt late model racer. He is this close to a Lucas or a World of Outlaw win on the dirt late model scene. And so they're coming through Tuesday nights at Charlotte, and they're headed everywhere, and they're taking your trophies and taking your money too. My kids.
Including the ARCA Menard series, and more recently, we've talked about Isabella Robusto a lot on this show. She was a guest here a couple of weeks ago. I remember, because I was living down there at the time when she started, she was just, 5 or 6 years old maybe in Bandoleros, and it's been fun watching her come up through the ranks, through the Legend cars, through late models, and now into the national spotlight of this sport.
Yeah, her and her brother Will came up. She ran a tie-dyed car. Her car was tie-dyed color. I talked to her at Phoenix before the ARCA race, and I forget whether it was her belt or her wristband. She had a wristband that was still tie-dye. She had a little tie-dye, but she came in with a tie-dye race car at just a tiny little thing. Her brother Will was out there racing. And the thing that I first off noticed about Isabella, a lot of times when you get a brother and sister, that combination, the brother is the more aggressor. It's just human nature. The brother... Isabella never shied away from her brother or anybody else. And so watching her, like we had the ARCA call at Phoenix, watching her develop into what she has developed into as far as a driver working in the Toyota program with Venturini Motorsports, what a reward that was. We had that one, we finished a rain delay, rained out at the end. We were in one of the garages doing Victory Lane or post-race celebration. And I'm so glad I got to talk to her after that. She didn't win the race, but she put on a show. And yeah, she's one of those tweeners. She's one of those that we will be talking about on Sunday afternoons pretty soon. For
sure, especially after her last couple of performances. I mean, third place at Portland. I mean, that even surprised her. So she's well on her way for sure. 10 race schedule, right? And it runs through July 30th, so kind of every week. What makes we know the racing is great, but you guys also are focused on fan entertainment. And boy, it started with the cookout milkshakes. You had the bus races last night. I mean, it's more of also a show, too, than it is also providing a platform for these young racers.
Yeah, I had one of the moms come up to me last night, and she's been around the sport for a while. She came up to me last night, and she said, I got to tell you something. I did something last night. This was Tuesday night. So she said, I did something last night, Monday night, that I've never done before. And I said, what's that? And she says, I went over and sat in the stands. She's a mom, so they're always in the pits.
Right.
She says, I will never come to the pits again. We're having way too much fun in the stands. I'm over here stressing, and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do. My husband's working on the car. Everyone's working on the cars. I'm stressing. We're over there. We're doing the chicken dance. We're screaming and hollering. One of the things Charlotte Motor Speedway has done, and I am such an advocate, whether it's racers, we've talked about young racers. I am such an advocate of young people in the sport. I love that we have young racers, but we also need to have young PR people. We also need to have young mechanics. We also need to have young announcers. And so one of the things Charlotte Motor Speedway has done the last 2 or 3 years is they've developed their intern program. And we've got 2 interns, Adrian and Molly, our interns. They've taken over a lot of the fun stuff that I used to do.
Yeah.
They're down on the stage now. And so they're doing all of the games and they're doing all the fun. I just love this. I just absolutely love this. These young kids are taking over. I love that they're taking over the fun and games. I hope that in 3 years they don't take over my gig here at MRN. But I love that they're taking over the fun and games. Charlotte Motor Speedway has done such an amazing job with this. This thing has evolved. We were before COVID. It was like, I'm not sure where this thing is going. Then COVID hit, and then they have stormed back after COVID. They've rolled up their sleeves, and this is the directive right from the top, right from Marcus Smith. He's like, we're either in Legends Racing, 600 racing or U.S. Legends cars, producing cars, having a marquee event like the Summer Shootout and then all the championships at the end of the year, or we're not. Yeah. They sat down, they gathered all the troops, and they said, we're in. And this thing over the last 2 years has really spurned on and really grown, and it's been phenomenal. It really, truly has. Fun stuff.
Awesome.
There is nothing like the postman announcing the fan walking into the stands, describing all of the food and ice cream that they are holding.
Yeah,
I love it.
It was great. We had some guy had 3 or 4 Hungry Howie pizzas last night. I'm like, dude. The first night was all of you brought a cookout a cup you got in for free, and so everybody had a cookout cup. I don't know if there was shakes or sodas or whatever it is, but it is really cool. Nachos and popcorn. We have all of the great racetrack food there, and it is fun. That's what it is. It's fascinating because there's two sides, and I think that mom that I referenced earlier kind of shared on the backside of the racetrack, the pit area of the garage. There are the Masters division, which are the guys 40 and older that never made it in NASCAR, still think they could do it, and are having a good time. They are those guys. They're the pro division. As I say, Bubba Wallace is there, but they're the pro division that are the 20 to young 30 guys, and they're just racing. They love it, and maybe they can catch a sniff of something here later in their career, which is weird to say. But then when you look at all the kids are climbing the ladder. And so it's stressful. It's tough over there. So you have that side where everyone is just doing their thing, and you have our side where we're just yucking it up and doing the chicken dance and the YMCA and busting this guy for walking in with flip-flops and a plate of nachos, and it is a blast. It really, truly is. Summer Shootout personally has been a dream gig, and it's a dream because it continues on. I literally, last night I was sitting there, I got home, I got to watch the high limit race, and I just turned everything off, and I sat there and I said, I think I'm having more fun doing this now. And when you're 27 years into a gig and having more fun doing it, I'll tell you, it's a pretty good spot.
We're always doing something new, something fresh, and that's what makes it so exciting. But where does this event rank in terms of, if you look at U.S. Legend cars and all they have going on, they've got Atlanta Motor Speedway doing all that stuff, but where's the Cookout Summer Shootout at in terms of marquee events? It's probably right up there.
Yeah, it really is. This thing started, it was funny, Humpy Wheeler was overseeing it, and Elliott Ford's Robinson, a great road racer, they're the ones, and they were building these Legends cars, and they're like, we need an event to show these cars off. And so what they did is they're sitting there at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and they just cut a path from the double dog leg down to pit road and cut another path. And then, look, we've done it at Texas. We've done it at Atlanta. We've done it. There was a track up in Kentucky. We've done it at a lot of the racetracks. And they said, we need an event to show this off. In the early days, this was live on Fox Sports South. This thing was, when I first started in 97, 98, when I first started, I had people all over the southeast part of the United States. They're like, man, that's great. You got that gig. And then, friends from the Northeast, which is where I was from, that had one of those satellites that could pirate every signal. They would tune in to Fox Sports South and watch it. And so this thing really took off. So yes, it has been the showplace of Legends car racing. Yeah, we have the championship events at the end of the year, and there's season-long championships that are very important, but it'd be hard-pressed. I think when you look at the success that the drivers have had coming out of there, I think Summer Shootout probably ranks at the top of where this needs to be, where all the attention is, where it's all focused, and I think that's why there's 135 cars. We have drivers from Idaho, from California, from Missouri, from Arizona, from Nebraska, all racing, and I don't mean transplants. I mean people that are coming in for weekends, coming in for the summer to race their kids at the Summer Shootout.
And Flow Racing too, right? Brings a whole different audience in the last couple of years.
The Flow thing has been great, and we bounced around a lot on that, but the Flow Racing connection has been great because it puts us on a platform where there's so many other eyeballs, so many other people to do it. I think the Flow Racing thing has been another part of it, and you're right. It does put a lot of eyeballs there, a lot of production, a lot of kids can get the video. The reality of the kids are with Instagram and TikToks and everything. They've got all their videos, and it just highlights how cool this is at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
I mean, I got to sit home Tuesday night and watch the school bus slobber knocker, which is one of my favorite events of the year. So how important is this 8-week, 10-event series to the development of drivers, do you believe? Because I hear it from drivers all over the Northeast. Up here in Connecticut, we run legend cars at select racetracks, and they say they're the hardest car to drive.
Yeah, they really are. It is a challenging car to drive. It really, truly is. And I've talked extensively, ironically, to Bubba Wallace about this.
Yeah.
And, the conventional wisdom in racing is, or a lot of the wisdom in racing is the dirt track guys maybe have an advantage because of that car control, that feel in the seat of your pants, okay? The Legends car, it's a short wheelbase, and the tires are like bullets. The Hoosier Racing tires are like bullets. There's no way to get all the grip out of these tires. And so you're constantly feathering and tiptoeing, and you're feeling that. Bubba has talked about that, and I think that's really key. I think it's fascinating because I think there's two ways of doing this. I think there's a way to climb the Bandolero Legends ladder and carry it into something. And then I think for other people, it's a great spot. The Summer Shootout's a great spot for just a cup of tea. I think William Byron, I think, is a great example.
Yeah.
They had the wherewithal. They had everything in place to do 1 year of the Summer Shootout and keep moving because it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, you're going to get your nose bloodied out there. Okay, you're going to get a bad call. You're going to get dumped while leading a race. You're going to learn a lot of hard lessons about racing that you need to know as a young kid. It's not all perfect. And face it, let's be real. Some of these kids come from situations where they've got a lot of money behind them, family money. And I'm talking, yes, Kevin Harvick, Jamie McMurray, their kids, Kyle Braxton Busch out there. There's a lot of other families that have a lot of money. And these kids, you come to the Summer Shootout, and you know what? There's going to be some poor kid out there that's just going to dump you down into turn number 1. Yeah, the flagger might put him to the back, but you're in the back too. And you've got to learn those lessons. Racing is an unfair sport. And I think that's one of the big lessons that comes from the Summer Shootout, and it's so competitive. It is an unfair sport. You want to be on that big stage at Charlotte Motor Speedway. You want to win there so bad, and you are likely going to have someone steal that from you multiple times over the course of your visits there to Charlotte Motor Speedway. We may or may not like that. That's reality.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the racing world. It's not always fair. And I think Charlotte Motor Speedway, because of the depth of competition, the tight confines of the racetrack, I think it is a great learning ground. So from the car control standpoint, Kyle, as you referenced, the car control style point, but also just the racecraft, it is tough. It is, you're beating and banging. You're brawling out there. You find yourself one lap, you're on the inside lane, freight trading somebody else. They get in your back bumper, you're in the outside lane, just doing the backup boogaloo through the field. And it is like, how do you compose yourself? How do you manage getting back into line? Not Summer Shootout related, but I had a great visit with Kevin Harvick. Keelan, of course, is doing a great job racing. Keelan was at Florence. It was Darlington weekend down there. Keelan's leading the race and got dumped.
Yeah.
Okay, to the back of the field, and he came back up, and I forget where he finished. He had a really good, solid finish. And the next day at Darlington, I said to Kevin, I said, man, that was a tough break for your kid. And he said, it's a good lesson. He said, Keelan did not lose his mind when he went to the back. He gathered his thoughts and he raced forward. He said, did I want my kid to get dumped while leading? No, nobody wants your kid to get dumped while leading. But this is a tough sport. The guy that can gather his thoughts after getting dumped while leading, or after getting roughed up, or after a bad call from an official, the guy that can gather his wits and say, all right, here I am restarting in 21st. Where do I go from here? That's a great race car driver. That's a Sunday afternoon race car driver. And Kevin was really kind of like, I think that was a really big learning moment for him because he never got on the radio, never acted. He just was like, okay, I got to restart at the back of the field. How far can I go? And we see a lot of that at the Summer Shootout. It's rough and tumble. It really is.
It's a really good point to make. You know, that's something I wish I had when I was racing micros, is kind of an area to kind of progress, right?
Yeah.
And to really focus on those skills. And I think it's pretty cool. You get to see a driver maybe on round 1 or round 2 and see where they are on round 10, right? And just see the progression on a driver in that perspective. Yeah,
we will do that. That is for sure. There will be guys right now that are struggling that at the end of the year will be running at the front of the field.
Yeah.
They really will, because of the progress they're making. You know, it's just really in an 8-week window, 10 races, it kind of encompasses a lot of racing. It really does. Good stuff.
Certainly does. Awesome stuff. Hey, before we let you go, Steve Post 68.
Yeah.
You are at a racetrack, no matter if it's your weekend off, You're at a racetrack for MRN. You're going to Florence. You're going over here. If it's Darlington weekend, you're going over here. You're going to a high limit race, whatever it is. Why? Like, where did that start from?
I love being at racetracks. When I was a little kid, all I ever wanted to do was be at a racetrack. You mentioned earlier, we're not going to reference age. Next week, I turn 60. And I love being at racetracks as much at age 59 as I did as 8 years old. I love being at a racetrack. And one of the messages I've really preached a lot this year, everything I do, we are so fortunate with television coverage, with radio coverage, and with streaming coverage. You know, Dirt Vision, Flow, Piro TV, NBC, Fox, MRN, PRN, the coverage is phenomenal. And it pales in comparison of being at a racetrack.
Yeah.
You got to be out at the racetrack. You got to have the popcorn. You got to see the people. You got to hear the noise. You got to smell the tire smoke. You got to smell when the guy burns up a rear end and that stinky rear end grease. You got to do all of that. So what I've done, and I've got Postman 68 is a blog site, and it is something I really wish I could put more time into because it's just sharing that passion. It's get out to that racetrack. Get out and go to that race. So let's see. I went to Bowman Gray Saturday night. That was race 68 for the year. So we're at 69.70. So tonight, if I do get to Millbridge, and I very well might, it'll be race number 71 on the year. The big message is go to a racetrack.
Yeah.
Go to a racetrack. Wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening for, you know, and I know later in the program, you'll give the highlights of what's coming up on Flow, what's coming up with the NASCAR Weekly Series, all of the regional racing action. There's all of that, and there's so much more. Find a local racetrack. Go to a racetrack. That's what Postman 68 is. That's what it is. I want to double back one final thing, and I appreciate that. Postman 68 is all about getting to a racetrack. Last night, okay, we're sitting here in Concord, North Carolina. What's Millbridge? 20 minutes?
Yeah.
20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Okay. Within 20 minutes, there were 3 places running races. Millbridge had 112 entries last night. Kids can run multiple divisions. There had to be 80 to 90 kids up there racing. Okay? Last night's Summer Shootout, 135 entries. Let's say the Masters division and some of the pros, that's 110 kids racing. Okay? One that we don't talk about a lot. You work at Millbridge. I love Millbridge. I do the Summer Shootout. The North Carolina Quarter Midget Racing Association in Salisbury.
Yeah.
It's a track that Bobby Labonte started last night, had 114 kids on their summer program. 114, 112, and 135 within 30 minutes, Chris, of where we're sitting.
On a Tuesday night.
On a Tuesday night. Yeah. Kids racing. I love this. I'm old, okay? When I was a kid, you had to have your driver's license.
Yeah.
That's not better. That's not better because by the time you had your driver's license, you found basketball, football, girls, pot, marijuana, alcohol, anything else. We've got kids now that are finding racing at 5 years old and at 8 years old and at 12 years old.
Sure.
And they're finding it before our old antiquated rules about having a driver's license, they would be gone somewhere else. Now there's so many kids. So whatever that is, 114, 112, and 135 kids within a half hour of us racing. Kyle, you have the Wild Thing program on Monday night. You had over 100 carts there on Monday night. There's so many great kids programs, and I'm so excited about where the sport is.
We just need to get Kyle in a cart. That's what we're trying to do.
Oh, man. Well, he would be the key Wild Thing.
That's true.
I mean, he already is a Wild Thing.
We have to deal with him all the time.
If you've traveled with him, Chris, and you have, you know he's a Wild Thing.
Yeah.
Especially on the airplanes.
Oh, yes, on the airplanes. Oh, back in the day. Oh, back in the day on the airplanes. Oh, well. Great time. Now, and I appreciate you guys letting me get on my soapbox. I am so passionate about the kids racing.
We can tell.
See at that, but I'm so passionate about everybody getting to a racetrack. Get out to a racetrack, folks.
We can't wait to see you at Millbridge tonight. I'll definitely give you, it's the Steve Post approved French fries at Millbridge and popcorn.
Chris, I don't know what they do with the French fries there. Someone said they're the best French fries in racing. I said, no, they're the best French fries on the planet.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm shocked like the folks at McDonald's and Chick-fil-A haven't sent people there to try to get that recipe.
It's not unreal. Good for my diet.
No, it's not good at all for that.
Who cares?
I mean, but it is great. French fries at a racetrack, popcorn at a racetrack. Popcorn at a racetrack. You got to have that as well.
Darn right. Well, hey, thanks for stopping in.
Yeah.
I look forward to going to Iowa with you. It's my first time going to Iowa this weekend, so we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, there's the schedule makers. Oh, the schedule
I know,
makers.
in Knoxville.
Oh, I know, but we might have to steal a race car and go see some World of Outlaws over the weekend.
Sounds good to me. Well,
Yeah.
Steve Post, appreciate it. Best of luck with everything, right? Millbridge, Cookout, Summer Shootout, and, of course, with the Motor Racing Network. Steve Post stopping by here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Coming up next, we've got the calendar and some news and notes in the world of short track racing. That's coming up next here on Coast to Coast on MRN.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Thanks to Steve Post for joining us in here. Of course, he'll be busy with myself down on pit road this weekend for the inaugural Cup Series event at Iowa Speedway. Of course, jam-packed with ARCA and NASCAR Xfinity as well. Some news and notes, K-Rick, before we get to the calendar this week in the world of NASCAR regional racing. How about Luke Baldwin? He's going to make his NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour debut on the big track at New Hampshire Motor Speedway coming up next week, June 22nd. And obviously, when you hear the name Baldwin, it's synonymous with modified racing. Of course, his father, Tommy. He's been doing a nice job. 602 crate late model champion at the World Series of Asphalt. Already has a tour type win on the Smart Tour. Expect big things from Luke Baldwin this season.
Yeah, his grandfather, the late Tom Baldwin, so successful for many decades up here in the Northeast, also from Long Island in New York. You mentioned Tommy has had a lot of success at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway as an owner in both the Cup Series and in the NASCAR Whelen Modified. So it'll be interesting to see what Luke can do. Luke was also at Stafford last week trying to maybe get a little bit of a warm-up in the SK Modified, but unfortunately wasn't able to get to the racetrack or get on the racetrack and compete. So going to be a good field. A lot of storylines in New Hampshire next week, whether it be new drivers coming into the modifieds or modified drivers going into the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Justin Bonsignor, and also announced this week Glenn Reen, who has had a lot of success on the Whelen Modified Tour and in SK Modifieds and late models up here in the region, will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut with Joey Gase. So a lot happening at the Magic Mile next weekend.
100%. Can't wait to see how those drivers do, and congratulations to Luke. We look forward to covering that as well from the Magic Mile. Now, the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly National Championship, of course, is continuing on. We're probably just shy of halfway, maybe around halfway. Not really sure exactly where the week fall, but doesn't matter for Connor Hall. The guy's been leading this since the drop of the green flag on the 2024 season. 15 wins, Kyle, across 4 different racetracks. He's a Cars Tour winner, of course, weekly winner at Langley, South Boston, I believe, as well. And he's been all over the place this season. But Connor Hall is a force to be reckoned with, wants to add his name as a national champion. He's doing a nice job. I think has well over a 250-point lead on second place as well. That's Greg Edwards and Mark Wirtz, all these drivers from that Virginia kind of region of the country. And I think, Kyle, it's hard to dethrone somebody from this area of the country when you look at the amount of racing you can get done over the course of a season. But Connor Hall is doing a nice job.
It is. He does have 15 wins, and I'm not quite sure the car count in those races. I know that has a big effect on the number of points you earn. And it'll be interesting to see by like July or August when other drivers get the same amount of races under their belt. You can only count so many races. So he's going to max out here pretty quick if he hasn't maxed out already with 15 wins. And I think you only get like 30 starts or something like that. There's a formula to it. So when other tracks, like up here in the Northeast, begin to get more and more events under their belt, drivers continue to pick up more wins, that gap should shrink. But you're right. The national champion usually comes out of that Virginia, North Carolina late model scene just because of the number of races and the number of tracks that the drivers can compete at and the large fields. I mean, South Boston gets pretty good fields of, 18, 24 cars, somewhere in that range, and that'll get you maximum points.
100%. So we'll keep an eye on it as well. But Connor Hall doing a nice job so far as we hit about the midway point of the month of June. All right, speaking of the month of June, well, this week, a lot of short track racing on your menu for digesting here this weekend. Starting off with the location the Motor Racing Network will be at, Iowa Speedway. Welcome back. First time since 2019 we will be there for a NASCAR national race. By the way, it is the first Cup race on Sunday at Iowa Speedway, the newly repaved or somewhat repaved, I guess if you want to call patched on the bottom. We'll dive into that, of course, throughout the weekend. But nonetheless, ARCA Menard Series makes its return there. They're no strangers to Iowa Speedway. But again, a big weekend for them with NASCAR being in town. 6 races, 6 different winners on the national side so far this season, Kyle. Entry list was just released yesterday. No surprises, really, when you look at the usual players that should be there. Gio Ruggiero, LeVar Scott, William Sawalich in the JGR Toyota. I mean, this is a pivotal point in the national championship if you're Andres Perez. Can this weekend finally be it? I don't see a lot of Cup opportunities or Cup guys running this race, so could he maybe take it to a William Sawalich this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be wide open, and there's a lot of momentum with Andres Perez right now. We talk about him week after week being on the podium or in the top 5 and leading laps. It's only a matter of time before he gets that first win. And well, it's been a while since the ARCA Menard Series last raced on the Iowa Speedway. So, we'll see what happens when they hit the racetrack. A lot of young drivers and a fairly big racetrack. It's a big short track, just shy of a mile. So, for a lot of these young drivers, they haven't seen these type of speeds, that tight of a radius. So it'll be fun to watch on Friday.
It'll be fun to watch as well. Again, they repaved the bottom about groove and a half, 2 grooves around Iowa Speedway, but the old pavement is still there on the front stretch, the back stretch. So going into turn 1, it's a lot of character, a lot of bouncing around. We know those ARCA cars can certainly feel ill handling when they're not, gripped into the racetrack. So it's going to be fun to watch some of these rookies that maybe have not been around Iowa Speedway get a muscle on their race car here this weekend. So again, that's going to be Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, the airtime. MRN has the call. We will be there all weekend long. ZMAX Cars Tour back in action after a weekend off. The Minis Mission 125 at Dominion. Again, another legendary NASCAR weekly track on Saturday. You can watch that on Flow Racing. Mini Tyrell and others with the Cars Tour there, Kyle, doing something they have done the last couple of years and inviting about 30 patients and their families from the Walter Reed Medical Center and children battling cancer. They get an all expenses paid racetrack visit. They get the suite. They get to be down there on pit lane, meet some of the drivers. A special weekend when you think about late model stock racing and in this big championship with Cars Tour, giving back to those in the community.
Yeah, an all-access opportunity for these families that are going through so much. And you're right, this is the 3rd or 4th year, I think, that the Cars Tour has done this and worked with the Walter Reed Medical Center, bringing families to the racetrack. You're able to see the recap videos following the weekend. And, some of the most emotional moments of the season will come from this weekend, no doubt. And all of it off the racetrack. Just being able to see the families interact in the pit area with the drivers and up in the suites when the cars go to green and seeing their reaction. Just an unbelievable weekend and good for Cars Tour and all of their race teams keeping this program going year after year.
And it's a great race too as well. So they're going to be treated to a pretty spectacular race Saturday night when you've got Connor Hall. Of course, we talked about him leading the national championship points, but leads the Cars Tour points with a win and 5 top 5 finishes over Brent Cruz, who has been so close and literally missed out in that 3-wide finish last week at Langley. He's got himself a win as well. So those two kind of at the top of the leaderboard. Butterbean Queen, right there in capitalization period there in that 3rd spot. He's got 13 points behind over Carson Quapo. Again, you're defending in 2-time national champion in the Cars late model stock division, trying to get a 3-peat. So it's still tied at the top, Kyle. It's hard to pick a winner here, but they're going to be going for it a little maybe extra hard for those kids at Walter Reed. So it's going to be fun to watch. And so it's going to be an exciting weekend out there at Dominion. Speaking of late models, our super late model stars, the ASA Star National Tour is back. We talk about Ty Majeski being dominant last year, winning the championship. He missed a few races this year, kind of said, I'm not going to run for the title, but hey, we're going to Wisconsin for a doubleheader on Father's Day weekend. You bet Ty Majeski is going to be in the field, and he is. So he's going to be leading the charge coming into a doubleheader. Again, Friday it's going to be at Madison. Then on Sunday, it'll be the Father's Day 100 at the Milwaukee Mile. Kyle, it's a who's who in super late model racing. Derek Kraus is in the field, but it's going to be hard to beat Ty Majeski in his home state.
Yeah, Casey Roderick, Cole Butcher. I mean, the list goes on and on. But yeah, Ty Majeski is back with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series off now for the better part of June. They're not back in action until Nashville, the last weekend of the month on that Friday night. So that allows some free time for Ty to go out and do what he loves. Maybe not best, but second best, and that is super late model stock car racing. And he's been so good every time he hits the racetrack. And, like you said a second ago, early favorite going into this weekend's pair of races for the series.
That's right. Bubba Pollard in the field as well. Caden Kvapil, the younger brother to Carson, is in it in his rookie season. Cole Butcher finished second here last year to Ty. He's leading the championship. Not going to want to relinquish that by any means, but certainly going to have to go through Ty Majeski again. So that's Friday and Sunday, ASA Stars National Tour. It's kind of the Father's Day double, as they're calling it here, coming up this weekend. Thunder Road's in action on Thursday. Stafford, Kyle, you announced on Friday is doing their weekly deal. Fingers crossed on the weather forecast. Autodrome Granby as well on Friday. And then, of course, all your NASCAR regional action from Jennerstown, Riverhead, Berlin Raceway back with their weekly series. Hickory, Langley, Wake County, and more all on Saturday. So lots to take in this weekend, of course, with everything also going on at Iowa Speedway. Kyle, your driver of the week this week. We've gone all over the place. We've been north of the border. We've been in Cars Tour. We've been in Modifieds. Who takes the cake this week?
We're going to go overseas this week. Yes. Okay. Liam Hesmans, winner of round 6 of the NASCAR Whelen Euro Series, his second race win of the season, picked up that victory at Brands Hatch on Sunday morning, at least Sunday morning our time. Fun race to watch. 30 cars took the green flag, part of a doubleheader out there. Part of American Speed Fest, his second win of the season, and becomes an early championship favorite as they race toward their playoffs coming up at the end of the summer months. But Liam Hesmans off to a good start. Bunch of top 5 finishes and now 2 wins and is like I said a second ago, one of the early championship favorites going in to the second half of their season out at Brands Hatch.
That's such a cool series. Ryan Vargas, Xfinity Series driver, has been out there competing. He said, I think NASCAR could come here and run a race at Brands Hatch. I mean, that place is so cool. It's so wide. It's so big and vast, and really cool to see some of the drivers out there competing. And you're right. It's a really cool series. Brands Hatch is a fantastic place. All the places they go to on the Euro Series. So really good stuff. MRN is back on the air again this weekend after a weekend off at the Iowa Speedway, of course, with a big weekend coming up beginning Friday. We've got Cup Series practice. We've got, I believe, an hour-long session for you. 5:30 p.m. Eastern is the airtime on that on Friday, followed by the ARCA Atlas 150 at 8 p.m. Eastern for the ARCA Menard Series. Then on Saturday, doubleheader with Cup Pole qualifying coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern Saturday. Then the NASCAR Xfinity Series, the High V Perks 250 at 3 o'clock Eastern Saturday. That all leads into Sunday NASCAR Live Race Day on the air for you at 6 p.m. Eastern, counting you down to the Iowa Corn 350, the first Cup Series race at Iowa. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Haven't been to Iowa since my tenure started with the Motor Racing Network. It's always a good time. Kyle, any advice for a first-time Iowa visitor?
Enjoy downtown Des Moines. It is a beautiful, beautiful spot. A lot of great eateries, a fun boardwalk to take in the sights and the sounds of downtown. So if you can, and I know a lot of these events take place in the late afternoon, but if you can get over there in the evening or after the sun goes down, it's fun. I know there's a lot of folks talking about going to Knoxville, which is right up the road. I know the sprint cars are in town. Kyle Larson's trying to do it. I'm sure you'll be there as the hand goes up. So it's going to be a fun weekend. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cup cars handle that short track. I know I've never seen it being a short track, but it's kind of not quite an intermediate track either. It's a unique race track, and it's going to put on hopefully a great race all weekend. A lot of extra track time. I know a lot of the Xfinity Series and Cup drivers are excited about that, having more than just 20 minutes to adapt to the race car they have for that weekend and obviously the racetrack. So it's going to be fun there at the Iowa Speedway. Cannot wait. Appreciate it, Kyle. Best of luck on the weather here this weekend at Stafford for Fingers crossed. Yes, and we'll see what happens. But of course, thanks to you guys for tuning in here to this week's episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. For our guest Steve Post here this week, our producer Pat Jaggers, Kyle Rickey. My name is Chris Wilner. We'll see you next time here on Coast to Coast.